The DOJ, the FBI working with the swamp. Folks, it's hard to explain the level of corruption, the depths of low these people sunk in order to try to put an end to President Trump's career before he was elected and before we got a new director of the FBI and a new attorney general, Obama, Brennan, Clinton, Comey, Biden. And they never thought President Trump would win again. They did everything in their power to make sure it didn't happen, didn't they? The incessant lawfare, the slander, the defamation.
Biden wanted me in here, okay? He wanted me. It didn't work out that way, but he wanted me in here.
Yeah, well, they thought after all of that, there's no way Trump would win, just like they insisted he wasn't going to win the first time.
He's not going to be president. He is not, Donald Trump is not going to be president of the United States. Take it to the bank.
Okay.
I guarantee it.
All right, all right.
I think if he becomes the president, he'll make it great, because the States is already great.
I think that man will be president of the United States right about the time that spaceships come down filled with dinosaurs and red capes.
On that note, Tom, pleasure.
Take it
Thank
from
you very
me.
much.
How about that?
Cheers, Tom.
And then, of course, there's Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been saying that he will run for president as a Republican.
That soundbite went on for a while. I can't stand listening to these clowns. I could watch them, these idiots, for hours, but they start to make you nauseated. But there's a reason that we ended it right there, because he went on to talk about Obama. Because Obama wasn't just saying those things out loud to the press. These people were actively working behind the swampy scenes to try and make sure Trump was never going to be president again. And now, thanks to the fact that President Trump did, in fact, win the White House yet again, we're finally going to get to understand just how deep the corruption on the left was. Yep, it's the find out portion. F-A-F-O, find out, of the festivities. It smells like some good old-fashioned retribution o'clock. The president has a knack for saying things, doesn't he? Words are never minced with President Trump. And because of that, and that off-the-cuff, unfiltered nature of his banter, they try very hard to discredit what he says. Here's a case in point.
President Obama was a terrible president. President Biden was the worst president in the history of our country. President Bush should not have gone into the Middle East and blown the place up. So I don't give him high marks here.
Just a normal day in the life. So when President Trump insisted his first campaign was spied on, CBS News' Leslie Stahl insisted it wasn't true, clearly having received her marching orders to cover for Barack Hussein Obama.
So the biggest scandal was when they spied on my campaign. They spied on my campaign.
Well, there's no real evidence of that.
Of course there is.
No.
It's all over the place. Leslie,
Sir,
they spied on my campaign and they got caught.
Can I?
Quick anecdote. That interview happened on October 20th of 2020, about a week and a half or so before the election of 2020. And I had an interview with Trump slated right after Leslie Stahl. She ticked him off so much, he was breathing fire by the time we were doing our interview. And I had an hour with the guy, and believe me, he was really ticked off. But notice how Leslie Stahl started saying there's no evidence. Right off the top, there's no evidence. Stopped herself and instead says there's no real evidence. What does that even mean, Leslie Stahl? That's just the kind of thing you might say if you knew that there's, I don't know, a chance it could be true. And now we know that it was true. She was completely wrong. Trump was right. There was evidence, but the corruption doesn't stop or end right there. Turns out that Barack Obama was the man behind the curtain, the Russian collusion mastermind, after all. A bombshell new CIA review looked at the Obama administration's spy agency's assessment of the 2016 election and the possibility that Russia interfered to help Donald Trump. They went from Russian interfered to help to they're nuts on the left. Well, that investigation was deliberately corrupted by our own CIA and FBI to frame a sitting president and accuse him of treason. Then CIA Director John Brennan, wackadoo, complete wackadoo, moron, lied to Congress, remember that? Lied to the Senate panel under oath. One of the most corrupt human beings ever to work for the government. Remember that he was one of those 51 members of the so-called intelligence community who insisted that the Hunter Biden laptops was just a Russian disinformation campaign. Ha! So Brennan and FBI Director James Comey, by the way, who just called for 8647 written in the sand, essentially calling for likely, some people would say, the assassination of President Trump. Anyway, those two jackals knew from the get-go that it wasn't real. And yet they proceeded anyway. All the three-letter agencies manufactured these Trump collusion reports on Obama's orders. Obama, Hillary, Brennan, Comey, they all tried to frame the sitting president for treason on a completely fabricated report. No evidence and falsified testimonies from our own CIA intelligence agencies and, by the way, our own FBI. Strzok and Page, remember those two clowns? The great Tom Sowell said this about Obama, and I'm quoting, Barack Obama's political genius is his ability to say things that will sound good to people who've not followed the issues in any detail, regardless of how obviously fraudulent what he says may be to those who have, meaning who have been following along. He doesn't just say things, though, does he? He's a corruption artist, Obama is, to the extreme, and it's high time for some accountability. But wait, there's a little bit more. Act now. Documents reveal that the FBI interfered with the investigation on Chinese meddling in the 2020 election to cover for who? Christopher Wray, the FBI, former FBI director. The FBI knew about China's interference, but covered it up and blocked the probe to protect Wray, who insisted that China wasn't involved. Meanwhile, Wray doubled down on further Russian collusion.
And I think the intelligence community has assessed this publicly primarily to denigrate Vice President Biden and what the Russians see as kind of an anti-Russian establishment. That's essentially what we're seeing in 2020.
So I'm no expert in body language, but right there, he looked awfully uncomfortable, maybe like someone whom, I don't know, maybe lying, probably. They never thought Trump would win again. They did everything in their power to stop it because they knew investigations were coming if he did win. This is what the president is up against. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino are digging in. And we are still only about 6 months into the administration, maybe even a little less, because no one has been held accountable, but they will be. They've been working hard to try to regain trust in the DOJ and the FBI. They're retooling both of those agencies. But the recent dead end around the Epstein case and the promise to reveal documents and information has been a major setback to that mission, to say the least. It's time to start sending these traitors to prison. The people demand it, and will never fully trust our government again until there's accountability with consequences. Send Brennan, Clapper, Comey behind bars. Coming up later in the show, stick around just a little bit, just hang in. It's going to be worth it. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. The show, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth joins us. You don't want to miss it. We're back in 2.5 minutes.